Now is April the 3rd, 2020, so almost 2 weeks ago now. And just to kind of give you an introduction into how this strategy works, or the couple of ad sets I want to show you then, for example, are these two here. The top one is a retargeting ad. The second one is a cold interest ad. So it's going out to people who have never seen my product, my brand, or my Facebook ad before. Both of them are on a £2 per day budget, which you can see here. And the first kind of interesting piece of data I want to show you is this cold interest one has a relevance score of 10. Relevance scores are super important. If your ads aren't producing the kind of results you want them to, then the relevance score typically is the first thing you should be looking at, because it's like a direct signal of how relevant your product or your ad is to your audience. And the higher the better, and the higher it is, the more it kind of translates into cheaper CPMs, cheaper clicks, etc. So the CPMs I've been able to produce are £2.11, £4.52 with an average of £2.91. Now these are website conversion campaigns and they are purchase ad sets too. As we get into the strategy, it will become clear how I'm able to get these CPMs so cheap. Cost per link clicks on average is 5 pence, which even for my kind of standards on average is actually really cheap as well. So I was quite surprised by that myself. And in terms of the actual amount of purchases, I believe it was only one purchase for £19.99, which left me with a 4.83 ROAS. So nothing special, but not too bad. As you'll see as we go on, if we have a look at April 4th, for example, the results were much better. I was able to get 3 purchases with a one £2 ad set, which was about £35 per order, £110 total conversion value, which with a ROAS of 53.91, which is obviously pretty crazy. One of the huge advantages of running these micro budget strategies is that if you have a day like this, for example, because the profit margins are so high, then it kind of pays for the next week or perhaps even 2 weeks of ad budgets, as long as you keep running them at £2 per day. If we move on to April 5th, so the Sunday, typically weekends are like better for me. I'm not sure what you guys get, but typically it's like evening times during the week and then weekends. However, due to the current climate, then everything's pretty random actually, to be honest, recently. So on the Sunday, April 5th, I only got one purchase for the same product for the same amount, which gave me a ROAS of 10.25 or 5.21 on average, because this retargeting ad at the beginning didn't get me any results for this particular day. If we move on to April 6th, I got absolutely nothing on this day. And this is kind of like, I was going to say it's a downfall to the strategy, but it's not really. When you're spending £2 per day per ad set, then you're going to have like really inconsistent results. Everybody knows that Facebook works on bigger budgets because the more data it has, the more consistent it can be. So that is kind of like one of the things to keep in mind, is that if you don't get sales for a couple of days, so if we take a look at April 7th, I got nothing this day as well, then don't worry about it, because you are spending such small amounts. Then you will see these inconsistencies. One thing to point out is the relevance score for this particular ad set has been pretty high and consistent all the way through, which is obviously a really good thing. And then if I just put this to lifetime, have a look at the results over the course since I started running these ad sets. I've had 23 purchases, £2.70 per purchase on average, which is crazy cheap even for me. However, during these current times, if you get the right products, and these kind of results are achievable. Both the relevant scores for both of these ad sets are pretty high, which is obviously a really good sign, which leaves me with a 14.32 ROAS on average. I can refresh this page as well, so you can see indeed that these results are real and are achievable for you too. You just have to have the right product and put it in front of the right audience. Now, that being said, then how does the actual strategy itself work? So to start it off, the objective being a testing strategy is to identify the best performing audiences and then scale the winning ones. When it comes to running Facebook ads, you should be doing one of two things. Number one is testing, or number two is scaling, and your budget changes depending on what your objective is. So if you're on a low budget, for example, the best thing to do is use a really small budget to test, to find which audiences are performing the best, and then kind of split your budget up and spend the majority of it on scaling, because the more budget you put to an ad set, then the more data can go through it, the faster it can optimize, the more consistent and more profitable the results can be. Per ad set then, the only thing that's going to change is the detailed targeting section. We're going to target one interest, and we're going to narrow this with engaged shoppers. By selecting engaged shoppers, what this does is it makes sure is that we target those people who are clicking the shop now button recently, within the past 7 days basically. So it increases your chances of finding those people who buy things using Facebook ads. Next up, we're going to use auto placements. Now, typically, I've always stayed away from auto placements, to be honest. I've always stuck to kind of like desktop news feeds on Facebook, mobile news feeds on Instagram and Facebook. But because things have got so much more competitive over the years, so when I first started advertising 4 years ago now, there were 3 million advertisers on the platform. And I think it was reported this year or last year, there was over 8 million people advertising. So there's twice the amount of people advertising, and there isn't twice the amount of users. So essentially there's more people competing for each space. So I started testing with auto placements about 6 months ago, maybe probably halfway through 2019, and the results have been really good so far. Because those other spaces are less competitive, essentially they're cheaper, you get a further reach, and essentially this lowers your CPM, and that's why I've been able to achieve those low CPMs which I showed you. In terms of the conversion day window, I'm always going to go for 7 days with low budgets. The longer the better with smaller budgets, and currently 7 days is the longest that Facebook gives us. So just make sure you click the more options and then make sure you've got 7 days selected. To kind of summarize this strategy then and why it works, number one is £2 budgets allow for slow but cost effective testing. You can go 3 or 4 days without seeing a single purchase, but because they're such small budgets, then it's not a big outlay, it's not a lot of money to lose. And what this also means as well, point two, is that one purchase equals your Facebook budget paid for the next 3 to 10 days. Obviously it depends on what your profit margins are. So for example, if you sell a product and each order gets you £20 profit for that particular ad set, spending £2 per day, it pays for the next 10 days worth of advertising on Facebook before you're in a loss. So one purchase can mean a lot. Point number three, by using engaged shoppers, I've already mentioned this, is you ensure you're targeting people that are currently shopping, are still shopping, because by selecting that, essentially it includes everybody who has hit the shop now button on other people's Facebook ads in the past 7 days. And then the last point, auto placements. By selecting this, you open up those cheaper places, those less competitive places to advertise, which in turn increases your reach for the same budget and makes your CPMs cheaper. Now, if you're thinking those places such as audience networks, etc., are cheaper because they're low quality and you don't get the conversions, you may be right, which is absolutely fine at this point. Because we haven't spent a lot of money and we're simply testing, this is where scaling and the next steps come in, which is, so start with the best performers. When you've ran these 3 ad sets for at least 5 days, I'm a really big believer, by the way, of I would much rather split my budget over the course of, say, a week versus 1 or 2 days. So once you've run these for at least 5 days, if not 7, start with the best performers, look through the breakdowns, and then narrow and increase the budget / duplicate by 10 days. So if you do like this micro budget strategy, what you could do is you could duplicate the ad set 10 times. So you essentially you're spending $20 per day. You can see the individual results per ad set, and then you can just kill the ones which aren't profitable and continue to scale and increase the ones that are. So when I say look through the breakdowns, essentially what we do, if we come onto here and use these two as an example, if we select this breakdown tab here on the right, we can go by delivery, and then if we go by gender, it's going to tell us where the purchases are coming from. So essentially across these 2 ad sets, it seems pretty kind of similar actually. 3 for female, 2 for male, 1 for uncategorized. But then that's interesting. In fact, for the cold interest targeting, we've got 15 purchases for males, 2 for females. So essentially that would be where you would narrow and then start to scale on the males. And then if we move to, let's go for placement, and once this loads up, then we can see where all the data has come from. So there's been 6 purchases in total for this retargeting ad, and every single one, which is quite interesting, has come from the Facebook newsfeed on a mobile device. If we have a look at the cold interest targeting, we can see that 1 has come from Instagram stories, but the majority have come from the Facebook newsfeed on a mobile device as well. So even though none have come from other places, what would we do now is essentially narrow this ad set to mobile newsfeed only, mail only, let it run for a few more days, and then increase the budgets and duplicate up to 10 times if we so choose to. And with that being said then guys, that pretty much covers absolutely everything I wanted to in this video. Hopefully you found it informative and quite interesting. If you do go out and test this, make sure you come back, let me know. I'd love to hear the kind of results you guys are able to achieve. Please do make sure you hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Please do make sure you subscribe for 4 to 5 videos every single week. And of course, any comments or questions that you want to ask me about, simply post them down below.